back to city school bash. Back to school bash that was held at the fairgrounds. We had an electronic bull. No. After I saw people falling off on low, I was not willing to try that one. So, next slide, please. I was able to be the keynote speaker for the opening of back to school convocation for the School of Education at North Carolina Central University. We're trying to build relationships with our local institutes of higher education. And so it was really, really good to be there to talk with the faculty about their students and to get kind of in line to begin recruiting their students. We have relationships with UNCG, we have relationships with Carolina, UNC, and we have relationships now we're building with North Carolina Central University. These two students are students who stepped forward and said they're very interested in opportunities in Chatham County. So it was a great day for us to really kind of have conversations with those students about their aspirations for being teachers. Next slide. And then our summer sit-downs, we had 3 of them where we had a few people show up to really talk with us about what we could do, how we could do it. We shared some things with them. Most of our conversations were about safety and what we were planning to do for the coming year, and just really an opportunity to touch base with families in our community. And we had one at 3 different sites, one at North Chatham, one at George Moses Horton, and the other was at Siler City Elementary. And next slide. And so there was a great program in our library called Being Bilingual Rocks, which is a music program that they sponsored over there. And it's since we're dual language schools throughout, exposing kids to biliteracy early on is outstanding. And so I was pleased to just go and visit. It was a Saturday morning, and so it was fun to just kind of be there as a representative of the school system. Next slide. And I'm not going to go through all the schools, but we just had the big announcement at Wolf Speed this past week, and we were so excited about this announcement and what that's going to mean for not only our community, but our school system. Next slide. And so I'll just quickly go through these. We're going to run right through. The virtual academy is up and running, very well done. We were excited. Bennett School has just some pictures go. Next, just keep going. Bondley, lots of smiles. And our Chatham Central High School, I would say they're off to a great start. Chatham Grove, you're in this beautiful facility, and they're now getting to actually use all of it. Chatham Middle, I was there this afternoon, doing great work at Chatham Middle. Next, Chatham School of Engineering. They started early, and our students are doing some great work there. They've got some new equipment on site that they're using, and so we're excited about the work there. George Moses Horton. Our 5th grade space has been redesigned, and those students are in a more developmentally appropriate space. Next slide. J.S. Waters, we spent time down there. They're really doing a good job with community outreach and building relationships. Okay. George Matthews, I was there today. We're excited about their announcement last week across the nation. They're the school in North Carolina that was selected to produce Frozen. Only one school in each state was selected, and George Matthews High School was selected. This is the first year they've had dance and drama at George Matthews and Chatham Central High School. Harry. M.B. Pollard, just really an exciting place to be, and I'm always excited about their music program and what they're doing while I'm out there. There's so many kids who are really taking advantage of that there. Next. Moncure, again, just off to a great start. Schools are clean. Our students are happy. Next one. North Chatham, there's our cafeteria workers. They were explaining to me what a charcuterie box is. And so I learned what that was, and they helped me with that. Bus drills at the start of the year. Northwood High School, our students are really engaged and off to a great start. Next. Perry Harrison had a great time there. Lots going on there. Just doing a lot of good work as they got their year started. Pittsboro, great programs there. Mr. Watson has a young man who wears a blazer every day because he wants to be the principal. So he comes to school every day with a blazer, so we're excited for him. Next slide. Seaford High School, off to, they're growing. They're now 9th through 11th grade. And we're excited about the work there. Cyrus City Elementary School, really doing a great job there with the dual language program. Those students really pushed me to check my Spanish before I get there. Next slide. And so Hope, new principal, but lots of exciting work. I mean, you go there, you're gonna find kids all in the halls, all over the place, doing math all over the place, and it's really fun to see. Next. In Virginia Cross, just an exciting place for our kids, and a school that really exudes from the minute you walk in, just caring and love for our kids, and I'm excited about what they do. And so that's it. That's been our first month of school. We are excited about it. We have our great things. We have our challenges, but our kids are being taken care of, and we're excited about what we see every single day. We have 2 awards that we're going to give tonight, Mr. Chair. One is our Power of One Award, which ties into our theme for the year, and then our Exceptional Children's Award. We were going to give out our Excellence and Opportunity Award, but the teacher was unable to be here tonight. So we'll give out those 2. Dr. Moran.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As we roll out our new strategic plan, One Chatham, we also want to uplift the power of one. We all probably in this room remember that individual that inspired us, or maybe saved the day when we needed it most. So every single month, we will be bringing you someone in our district who had an impact on the district or who had the impact on the life of an individual. This can come from community members, parents, staff, students. The stories are already rolling in, and I've had a few tear-jerking moments reading them, and so we can't wait to get to share these with you. They will get, get this Power of One award, and they'll also get a gift from a local business in our community as well. So without further ado, I will share with you this month's Power of One recipient. Her name is Mrs. Susan Hussey. Many of you know her. She is our lead Power School and Testing Specialist. She's going to be mad at me and come up here. If you don't know, she held the fort together while we've had 2 director changes over the last 8 months. We also had an office assistant vacancy in that office, as well as a new Power School manager. Needless to say, she was the constant, and she was the glue that held the office together. We would not have been able to have a smooth start to the school year without her hard work and dedication and leadership. So we congratulate her for being our first recipient of the Power of One. I'm also excited to get to invite Mrs. Sarah South Maddox to the podium. She is our Director of Exceptional Children and AIG, and she will tell you a little bit about our very first in Chatham EC Parent Advisory Council, or PAC, if you will. And I just can't say enough about her leadership in developing this group in the short amount of time she's been our director. And I've had such a great time getting to know all the parents that are here with us. We're going to make y'all come up too. So they've really put in a lot of hard work into celebrating our teachers and also just having the voices of our parents heard who have exceptional children in our district. So I'll turn it over to Ms. South Maddox.
Mr. Chairman, Superintendent Jackson, and members of the board, I am grateful for this opportunity to recognize an amazing group of parents as well as 2 outstanding EC staff members. Like Dr. Moran shared, our EC Parent Advisory Council is new to our district. We started in May with a steering committee, and we're moving into full implementation this school year. The purpose is to increase 2-way communication between parents of students with special needs and schools and the EC department, as well as for parents going through the process to have that additional support from someone who's been in their shoes. So if my officers who are present would come on up. Don't be shy. So we have Laurel Farrar, who is the parent liaison for Chatham Grove Elementary. Shannon Reeves, parent liaison. For Pittsboro Elementary School. Katie Corwick, parent liaison for George Moses Horton Middle. And Lauren King Dillon, parent liaison for Bondley School. Not with us tonight are Maria Polito, who is our parent liaison for pre-K, as well as Trisha Budd. She is a postgraduate parent. Her children have already graduated and found success, and she's here to support parents who are approaching the transition process to post-secondary education. So these are our officers, and we will have parent liaisons at every school this school year, and they kicked off the school year by recognizing 2 outstanding EC staff members who were nominated by parents for their work with students. So if Ms. Alicia Dunk and Mr. Neil Van Allen could join us. I suggested recognizing one teacher and maybe getting a gift card, and these parents said, no, we want to recognize 2 staff members and we think they need a whole basket. And so if you go to our website, the EC program does have a tab for our Parent Advisory Council, and you can see the newsletter these parents have created with a photo of the first award. And each month they'll be recognizing 2 EC staff members, as well as a spotlight on a student with special needs, and they're a pleasure to work with. So thank you for your time.
That's my report, sir. Thank you.
Here we go. Thank you. Can you hear me? Everybody okay? Okay. All right, we'll move along to our public comments time. Of course, there's the podium. Our guidelines are each speaker will receive 3 minutes. Public comment period shall not exceed 30. I think we've got 10, so we should be okay. Speakers may not donate any portion of their time to another speaker. Speakers unable to present all of his or her information. You can email it to us or give it to Ms. Guthrie. All remarks should be addressed to the Board of Education as a whole, and speakers shall refrain from comment or behavior that involves disorderly speech or action, name calling or personal attacks, obscene or indecent remarks, and derogatory comments on personalities, advertising or promoting the sale of products, services, or private enterprise, or promoting a contest or lottery. Complaints about specific employees should be submitted to the employee supervisor or the Human Resources Division, and concerns about school matters specific to them are encouraged to work with the respective principal or speaking about such matters during public comment. And I will start with, and if I do not pronounce your name right, please correct me if you don't mind. Don, is it Bonin? Bonin. Come on up, Mr. Bonin. Yeah, yes, sir. And Mr. Moore, if you just move on and you're next, and we'll keep it moving that way. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Don Galin. Been living in Chatham County for almost 20 years, or over 20 years. One of the best places to live in the world, actually. I always tell people you can get barbecue here and you can get bagels here. So I really like it. But to get back to what my concern is, What are the students learning today? Where do we rank? I'm starting this off with questions. I see that China, the United States ranks 26th in its education, reading, writing, arithmetic, science. And yet China is number 1 in English and reading and writing. Their computational skills, their supercomputers are stronger than ours, more powerful, and they are growing quickly. I see parents that I talk to, and they are very concerned about what some of the children are learning in school in terms of reading, writing, arithmetic. I run across people that can't even give change. So my question to you, I'm not saying this is you per se, but I would like to see Chatham County schools come out with top of the line, the highest in the state for reading, writing, and arithmetic skills. Because no matter how you look at it, this is the thing that will make you grow and be successful. You know this. I know this. Obviously, you can tell by the gray hair that I have. I never realized it. I wasn't the most enthusiastic student. But I'll tell you, I look back in my days and I got a damn good education. A damn good education. I served time in the military. I got a degree in business and another degree in business. But if it wasn't for my first grade teacher, Miss Boone, third grade teacher, Miss Shimleski, Mr. Cowlow in my third grade, I think, or if I repeated that, I just want to make sure and ask you, the board, what are you going to do to make sure, I challenge you to make sure that the students that go to this school come out number 1, top in this state at least, tops in this state at least. I think that's my time to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tim Moore and Sandy McNeil is on deck.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Tim Moore. I'm a resident of Chatham County, live in Siler City, and I'm going to echo that same statement is what's going on with our education. And he's right. I did my own research, and you can do it yourself. Pew Research, not a left or right group, says we're not in the top 20 in the world on any of those topics that he talked about reading comprehension, writing, and math. Countries like Macau, or you know where Macau is, it's basically the Vegas of Asia, are much higher than us. So I think that's something that we need to focus on. I agree with Mr. Ham. I think if we all come together on that, then I think we can get there, right? But I think probably what we need to do is we need to accept that and work on that and decide that we're going to do better at that. So this is probably the 7th or 8th Board of Education board that I've been to, and I don't think I've yet seen a academic excellence child brought forward to reward them and call them out for their academic excellence. We've had the basketball team, we've had the tennis team, we've had all these teams come up. How about the kids that are making A's, straight A's their entire life at school? That's being them up there because those are the ones that we need to recognize, call them out. Now, I'm not against athletics. I was a 3-letter sportsman in high school. I played college athletics. But I remember the most impactful thing in my athletic career is when I had to sit out a year for academic probation. It's the best thing that ever happened in my life. That's what we need to focus on is those academics. And I don't think we're doing that. I think we're doing a lot of social experimentation. I had a discussion this week with a teacher, which by the way, I don't see it mentioned anywhere in here, is Chatham Charter, where my granddaughter goes. And I asked these teachers, I said, so what makes this place so good? Why do your score so much better than any other place? The teacher said, you know what? I've been a public school teacher in this area for 20 years. That was her first year at Chatham Charter. She said, this summer I didn't do any re-engineering. I didn't do any re-education. I just came in this year and they say, You teach these kids and make them better. That's the only thing she did, and that's what she said. That's the only recommendation that she had from her school. That's what we need to focus on. Academic excellence, recognize it, reward it, and let's go out and let's focus on that, and let's get that done. Thank you.
David McNeil and Ryan Smith owned it.
Hello, board. My name is Sammy McNeil. I'm not from Chatham County. I'm from Moore County, and I worked with the Moore County Schools for 20-some years, formed their police department, served as their police chief, and investigated any complaints against teachers. And I got a call this past week, and like I said, won't mention any names, but just I want you to understand as a board, teachers do mess up. Teachers, sometimes you get bad teachers, just like you get bad police, just like you get bad employees. And sometimes teachers' agendas aren't your agendas. And we need to keep in mind that when a teacher belittles a child because she says one of her favorite things is this book, that's wrong. I'm burying my mom tomorrow, preaching her funeral, but it meant enough for me to ride over here to stand up for this child. And I want this teacher to understand he has no right to do that. That's a parent's job. I made you some notes, I'm not going to go over them, but you know, the free-floating earth, 3,500 years ago, Job wrote that. Science didn't prove the earth just hangs on nothing. Job said it did. The earth is round. Columbus didn't discover it. Isaiah wrote that 2,800 years ago. The first law of thermodynamics in Genesis 2:1, thus the heavens and earth were finished. The law of thermodynamics states that neither matter nor energy can be either created or destroyed. The Bible told us that. The Bible told us when Matthew Murray in 1850 read Psalms 8, verse 8, and it talked about the paths of the seas. He went out into the ocean and discovered there was currents running through our ocean. That's how we have our modern oceanography, the study of stars, where men used to count them and think there was 1,100 of them. But the Lord said you couldn't number them. Man's figured that out now. Our first president, one of the reasons he died, because he kept cutting and letting him bleed, thinking that was helping him. But in Leviticus 3,500 years ago, he wrote, the Bible said the life of the flesh is in the blood. Blood clotting, when children have their circumcision at 8 days. Man's just recently discovered that's the peak time in the medical terms to perform that on the child. God wrote that in the book of Genesis. The law of hygiene, the doctor decided, maybe I shouldn't keep washing my hands in this bowl. That hadn't been that many years ago. Maybe if I run my hands under running water, it'll stop the spread of disease. The Lord wrote about that in 3,500 years ago in Leviticus 15. And the law of quarantine, we went through that with COVID. We read about that in Leviticus 2. Keep your eyes open on some of these teachers and their agendas.
Ryan Smith and James Mashburn.
My name is Ryan Smith, and I'm here to address not only my concerns, but the vast majority of the taxpayers as well. I don't see how the board has the audacity to sit and let teachers bully and indoctrinate our kids. You're taking away their First Amendment rights. As Ronald Reagan said, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. Whose fault is that? All of you that sit on this board. It shows that all y'all are good for is telling people what they want to hear while you're sleeping under the rug. There's too much going on in schools that we don't know about. Do us all a favor, stop wasting our time, our tax dollars, and just step down so we can have an advocate for our children and their rights. It takes one tree, no, I said one, to make many matchsticks. However, it takes one matchstick to burn and destroy a whole forest. Now I'm comparing that to the board. The one board is destroying Chatham County schools. Your actions show that none of you deserve the position you're in. The horrendous things that are going in our school system is despicable, and nothing is getting done about it. Thank you.
Master and Marcus Glovership.
The power of one is what the speaker a moment ago said and alluded to. One Chatham. And I quote her, in all of our lives, we all remember that one person who was always there for us and impacted our life in a big way. And many of you in the back would raise your hand showing that God was the one who impacted your lives. We're not in the courtroom, but let the record show. Now, what was just alluded to is huge, because not only did something happen that harmed a child that could have been irreparable, but it was a violation of her rights. You cannot not take note of that. And you need to address that. All of us must address that. And I'm not singling out anyone, but I am singling out this group and this body. The rich thing is, the school mentioned a moment ago just finished diversity and sensitivity training last week. That's rich. And I might add, the bully and harassment numbers are higher at this school than the state and the county composite compiled together. And that's all 1 per 1,000 students. Now, folks, we do our homework. We're not dummies. You're elected officials and you work for us. Get used to it. So the point is, it has to be addressed because there's a violation of every student's civil rights and First Amendment rights here. And that came off the website of the ACLU. Familiar with that? They love to get all in your business. So I encourage you, I behoove you to do the right thing and address this correctly. We are encouraging those involved to take it to the next level. Address it is our plea.
Marcus Glovership and John Amanchu, I can't tell.
So all my life I had to do something right.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, board. My name is Marcus Cloversheets, and I come as a concerned parent. I have 3 children in the Chatham County School. I have 2 at George Matthews and 1 at Siler City Elementary. My concern is I have a special needs child at George Matthews. Many of the people sitting in here know about this. So if a child in the 8th grade is belittled for a belief, how is my child going to be treated because he's different? You know, it says a lot by saying bearing witness requires courage, not perfection. And this little girl did that. She tried to express how she feels, what she liked, not what everybody else liked. You know, I'd like to ask if people wanted to raise their hand in support of the board. I dare say that it's not many in here that would. You know, with a child with disabilities that is different, all he wants to do is fit in. So if he was treated different, how would that affect him? How would that affect me? You know, I have a senior in high school, have a junior, which is my special needs child, and I have a child in the 3rd grade. You know, would it be okay for somebody to pick on my third grader because he just recently got saved? I hope not. No, I have a nephew and a niece. Nephew from Bondley and niece over at Chatham Central. What's the board gonna do about the violence at Chatham Central? What's the board gonna do about the massive amount of overdoses by our children in the school system? And in the last 6 months of the school year last year, it was multiple, more I can count on both my hands and my feet. Now, I'm not talking about kids that came to school and took a Tylenol. We're talking about life-saving measures, CPR and Narcan. It's time for us to stop playing around with these kids' lives. And do our responsibility as a board, as parents, and as teachers. Thank you.
Pronounce for me, I'm sorry, John.
Amon Chukwu.
Okay, thank you, I'm sorry.
It-
Melissa McLeod.
It means I know God. Tonight I'm filled with righteous indignation for many reasons, but with only 3 minutes I can only share a little bit with you. To hear that a young girl was demonized because of her faith is a tragedy towards our republic. The truth is, there is an attack on Christianity in this culture. If that young girl was a Muslim student, that wouldn't have happened. But because her parents have trained her up in the way that she should go, a teacher who claims to be atheist demean her for her belief system. And I want to tell you tonight that that is awful. It's the lowest of the lowest that we can ever imagine that we can go to. You know, there was a time where the Bible was permitted into the public school system. And how did our children perform then? How was the hearts of our children in society when the Bible was allowed to get into the school system? Well, we didn't have as many school shootings as we have now. Our children performed better. And we didn't have many of the tragic ideologies being pushed upon our children like transgenderism, grooming, critical race theory, and what this county calls racial consciousness. You know, our teachers were trained for 2 weeks on a pseudo format of critical race theory. Critical race theory will never solve racism because critical race theory is racism. The only way that we can get rid of racism is that the individual, not a group, must come to the realization that they should love their neighbor as themselves. You know, I'm against white supremacy and I'm against black supremacy, but I'm for God's supremacy. And the Bible says that God be true and every man, every human being a liar. And to make black students feel like they are inferior because of the color of their skin is an affront to the very fact that I have 3 beautiful black children, 2 boys and a girl. And I don't teach them that they're inferior to anybody, especially someone that doesn't look like them. I train them that they can realize the American dream if they work hard, if they invest their time into things that matter. But it's a shame before God that these institutions today in America are teaching black children otherwise, as we are failing in the public school system. This must change, this must stop, and it will not happen on my watch.
Melissa McLeod and Dawn Porter.
Give my 3 minutes.
I'm not Melissa, I'm Dawn.
Okay. And,
Does somebody
is
want
it,
to take her place?
yeah, you go ahead. Is it Shanla Kennigan? Okay, sorry.
Hi there. That's a tough act to follow. I'm Dawn Porter. I am a resident of Bynum. I'm a parent. Can y'all hear me? I feel like.
Yes.
There we go. I'm a parent of a 17-year-old at Northwood High School and a 2021 Chatham County graduate who's now at North Carolina State University. First, I want to thank all the teachers, staff, the board for getting my children through school. And they're successful, and I appreciate especially the teachers and staff. These past few years have been incredible. So, I am actually coming to support the diversity, equity, and inclusion training that the school board has asked faculty and staff to complete. And while I don't speak for all parents, I do speak for a lot. And some of them are with me tonight who are not only in support of, but expected. And it sounds like from a lot of the speakers we heard a little bit earlier that diversity, equity, and inclusion training should also consider religious inclusion. But that said, I want to share about why I'm grateful for the board, and then I have an ask. And this is my timer, correct? Yeah. According to ProPublica Miseducation Database, Chatham County Black students operated at a 2.7 grade levels behind white students in 2018. New numbers are available for the Department of Education as a result of COVID. I'm sure this is different. Also, the Southern Coalition for Racial Justice's Racial Equity Report Card found that 51% students in Chatham County are non-Hispanic white, yet 89% of the teachers are non-Hispanic white. And that same study revealed the low-income Black students in North Carolina who had at least one Black teacher in elementary school were significantly more likely to graduate high school and consider attending college. It's been a while since I've pledged the allegiance. I don't work in the school system, but tonight what struck me is with the liberty and justice for all is how it ended. And the justice for all is what's important there. And I understand we're all on our personal journey and that we live in a time where it's been like the past 400 years where there's a lot of tensions that continue in the US. And I'm sure, I feel confident, most teachers, parents, everyone here, staff, faculty, feel like we are trying to give all of our kids a basic education. But there are unconscious biases. Until I went through a racial equity training 5 years ago, I wasn't aware of what was happening, and it was so enlightening to me. And as a parent, is that my deadline?
We'll wrap it up.
Thank you. I asked the board to continue with addressing some of these issues and beyond the training to look at how are we truly going to close these disparities between Black, white children, not on the shoulders of just the teachers. These are systemic problems. This isn't just the teachers' problems. And I thank you, and I'll submit the rest of my comments via email.
Thank you.
Can you clap more before?
Hello, I'm new to Chatham County, and I have grandchildren that will probably be relocating soon, I hope. But the reason why I'm here tonight is because of reading the critical race theory teaching, right? And so, and also the school standing, the rankings, right? Really, I'm just kind of you know, all my feelings have already been expressed, but I guess that as a teacher, right, I taught Sunday school and dance teaching, and I do substitute teaching as well, but really, our children are at school, right, to learn reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? Or else, how can they succeed, right? So the quickest point is great, right? And we know that. And so you don't need to bog down their minds. They should be so excited to learn, right? Not with yesterday's problems. And please, let's don't borrow from tomorrow's problems, right? If they know how to take today's problems and succeed, what more can you ask? That just says tomorrow they will succeed. So, and amen and hallelujah, right?
Okay, that brings us to the information items portion of our agenda. The 2022 teacher working conditions survey results, Dr. Batten and Mr. Bloss.
We're going to go off live right now when we come back. No, we need to
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The slides will come up. The Teacher Working Conditions Survey began as a statewide online survey in 2002. It has continued since. There's been 20 plus years of research related to this, and it indicates strong connections and correlations between the results of the Teacher Working Conditions Survey, student achievement, and teacher retention. So this evening we'll present a bit of a high-level overview of some of the pieces of this working condition survey, and then point out what are some next steps we can use this data for. This next slide just indicates the 117 indicators that are used. It's more than 117 questions, but this gives you a sense of the categories that are associated with this. My colleague, Mr. Blyce, is now going to walk through some of the indicators we've selected just to give you a sense of what was included this year.
All right, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the next slide shows you a comparison between the 2020 administration and the 2022 administration, and this is a comparison by standards. You can see that in 2020, Chatham County Schools was above the state in 10 of the 10 standards. In 2022, we were above the state in 11 of 11 standards, and they added a new standard. If you go to the next slide, we'll dive in a little bit deeper and we'll look at the individual elements. And these were the 117 questions that Dr. Batten was referencing. And we were above the state, you can see in 2020, on 92.3%. That means that we were only below on 9 of the 117 elements. You can see that in the top chart there in that first column. And then in 2022, we were above the state in 97.4%, and we were only below the state in 3. So our teachers are indicating a very high level of satisfaction with Chatham County Schools and with the conditions in our schools. The significance of that is that this survey is aimed in 2 main categories, and one is teacher retention, which is a big topic in the world today in education. The other piece is student achievement. And this is one of the things that as a school system that we need to focus on. Because by addressing these situations and these concerns, research will tell you that we'll improve teacher retention and student achievement. All right, next slide. So there were a number of elements that we felt were notable. And the first was the physical environment of classrooms in the school supports teaching and learning. And you can see at Chatham County Schools we're at 92.3%. The state was at 86.5%. The faculty work in school environments that are safe, 93.6% for Chatham County Schools, 88.5% for the state. In this school, we take steps to solve problems, 87.9% for Chatham County, 79.9% for the state. The district has a clearly defined mission and vision for all of our schools, 100% for Chatham County Schools, 91.7% for the state. The one element that has been for years the gold standard, and every time the survey comes up, this is always the very first place that you go and look. And I can tell you, as a former high school principal, this was always the first element that I always looked at. Overall, my school is a good place to work and learn. 91.6% to 84 point, sorry, my eyes are getting bad, 5% for the state. At this school, all students are treated equitably, justly, and fairly, 82.72%, 80.2% for the state. And the school provides effective and ongoing training and safety procedures to the state, because that has become, to the staff, has become a very important concept in this day and age. 96.15% compared to 92.8% for the state. All right, next slide. So I'm going to hand this back over to my colleague, and it's what do we do with this data, and how do we use it?
Thank you, sir. We listen to teachers during conversations, and so this data, even before it's officially released by the state, we're able to hear from them. And so going into this year, just as a reminder, the board approved a partnership with ESS. ESS recruits substitutes, provides benefits to substitutes that participate, even for minimal hours during the month. There are also gift cards and other work incentives for the substitutes. Through ESS, we have approximately a 93% fill rate for our substitute positions. And this is in comparison to a mid-80s as far as percentage from this same time last year. There are long-term sub positions through ESS as well as short-term daily positions that are available. Now clearly I'm spending a few extra minutes because there's an audience in attendance and I want them to write down ESS.com. Many opportunities available to support our schools. Additionally, with our school improvement efforts, what we've been able to see is approximately an 89% retention rate from last year to this year. As we hire new teachers, we've used a recruitment effort. It's a referral incentive program. It's part of our 4 R's. This particular piece, we've now been able to see out of the 169 new hires, 73 were referred by current employees. So about 43% of new staff hired in Chatham County heard the story of Chatham County from colleagues. And what they heard was, on the previous slide, 91.6% believe that Chatham County Schools is a good place to work and learn. So they're telling that story and their colleagues are coming. So definitely an item that we want to celebrate. Principals will continue to look at this data as they update their school improvement plans and goals for this school year. We thank you for listening this evening. Any questions?
Nope. Okay, thank y'all very much.
Thank you, Steve.
Oh, you do, I'm sorry, I thought you said no. My apologies.
Okay.
Go back to the other chart, I get the first or second one, I'm trying to jot down some things. I guess the first one. No?
Of the elements or the
No,
standard?
no. Go back down.
That one?
The one that, question 6. School takes steps to solve problems. I think in lieu of comments made tonight, sometimes, and having been there as a principal, sometimes the only way a problem can be solved if you answer it my way. And I don't like that 88%. But at the same time, maybe that 12% weren't willing to look at other alternatives or other options. So I think that's something, I would like that number to be higher, to see how problems are solved at the school, knowing that for some people, the only way you solve a problem is you do it my way. I understand that. The other one is, did the students, the 82%, 83%, question 13. That's what we're working on, and I think that number shows that we have room to grow, and that again, students are going to look at things differently. Whatever the outcomes to a situation, a student may look at it as, I got dumped on, or I'm being picked on, and they're not looking at the whole picture. So again, if you look at all those numbers, and there's 117 questions, yeah, I mean, there's others, but of the ones that you presented, red flag goes up saying that's what we got to work on. All the other ones in the 90s, 100, but it's right there, black and white.
Is that your question? I'm kidding.
More
You're just making a statement.
more
That's all.
statement than
Okay.
question.
Any other questions or comments? Excuse me, anybody else on the board? No, thank you. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Pratt and Mr. Price. Accountability 2021, 2022, accountability results, Dr. Moran.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We are excited to get the opportunity to share our story with you, but not through pictures, but through some graphs and charts. You know, we love some graphs and charts in academic services. We want to celebrate our 2021-22 accountability results. We have much to celebrate. Tonight, I'll have with me Ms. Susan Hussey and Darlene Reed-Clossy, who will both help in sharing this information with you. You do have access in your board items to the slides, as well as the accountability website will be updated tomorrow for the public. We will start with an overview of the accountability model, and please keep in mind this is kind of the 20,000-foot view. It's a high-level presentation of the data. There are hundreds of spreadsheets on the Department of Public Instruction website. We'll have those linked as well on our website tomorrow. And I'll turn it over to Ms. Hussey to start.
Good evening. Tonight we'll be sharing multiple points of data with you. We will review the district accountability model and its components, share school and district results, while highlighting areas of success and areas of opportunities. Finally, we will share with you some of the next steps to take as a district to continue the success of our students. You may notice some acronyms on our slides this evening. One that appears frequently is SPG, or School Performance Grade. Each of our schools earns an SPG that is comprised of the school's achievement score, which accounts for 80% of their grade, and the student's academic growth, which accounts for the remaining 20% of that grade. Grades are then converted to a 100-point scale and used to determine if that school has earned a grade of an A, B, C, D, or F. Some slides will also reference the performance composite. This percentage is determined by calculating the number of students who met grade level proficiency compared to the total number of students tested in that grade level or subject area. Grade level proficiency, or GLP, is the percentage of students who earn a level 3, 4, or 5 on their assessment. Level 3 students are considered to have a sufficient understanding, level 4, a thorough understanding, and level 5, a comprehensive understanding of the curricular content. The final piece of information on this slide references college and career, and this takes into account those previously discussed achievement levels, but only those who score at a level 4 or 5. Here we explain the school performance grades and the components that are used to factor in those grades at each different level. So in the left-hand column, we can see that for our elementary and middle schools, we use the results obtained from their reading, math, and science EOG scores, as well as any NC Math 1 EOC scores for that school. Also considered is the progress of our English learners and the growth for all students at that school. In the right-hand column, we discuss our high schools. Some of the same information is contained here while we're looking at the results for English 2, NC Math 1, NC Math 3, and Biology EOC scores, while we also factor in the ACT and the work keys. English learner progress and growth is also considered in their model, but we have extra components of math course rigor and the students' graduation cohort rates. Now, Dr. Moran is going to highlight some of our celebrations.
So we're happy to say that we had 89.5% of our schools who met or exceeded growth. Our schools all made significant gains this past year, and you'll see in some upcoming slides just that. In our elementary, middle, and K-8 schools, 100% of those schools met or exceeded growth. In addition, 100% of those schools also exceeded the state average in every tested subject. Our ACT scores, which if you're not aware, the ACT is the college readiness measure that is now used for college acceptance. Back in many of our days, that was the SAT. We are 10th in the state of North Carolina out of 115 districts. This is the highest that we've performed in many, many years. You can see here, our schools are each given a growth index. The growth index is measured in both negatives and positives, and anything considered above a 0.2 or a +2, is considered exceeded growth. And you can see here some of our schools that exceeded growth. They had very high growth indexes. You can see Perry Harrison and Seaforth there at the top with 8 and 6 respectively. What's noteworthy here is that it is often hard, like many of these schools, when you have high proficiency, to also get that high growth. So it's exciting to see that even our students who are already proficient are continuing to grow. We're also proud to report that 89.5% of our schools increased their overall performance composite, and that's right about 90% of our schools. Now, what's noteworthy here is that a gain of about 3 to 5 points is considered considerable, and we had schools that had 5, 10, 15, and 20-point gains. This particular slide shows you the GOP performance composite that Ms. Hussey mentioned earlier. And we are not only above the state here, but we're 3rd in our region. And you can see the types of schools that we are compared to. In Chatham, we like to look at the 10 districts that touch us. And then we also pull some other districts in, like Franklin, Hope, Jones, and some other districts that have comparable student populations, because we know that in Chapel Hill and Wake, the student populations are quite different. And so the schools that we actually tend to be a little more like are the ones that are down here with Orange County and Franklin, which we outperform. But that's pretty impressive to be the 3rd in our region. In addition, we're also 3rd in the region for our grade 3 through 8 EOG, our grades 3 through 8 reading, and grades 3 through 8 math. Our students are performing and excelling. We also have a celebration in our 5th grade science. We are 2nd in the region. This is the highest that we've ever performed in science. We have inquiry science kits and professional development for our teachers, and we're very proud of that particular accomplishment. Not only did our composites grow, as we just showed you in the previous slides, but every single grade and every single subject in Chatham County schools increased their composites. These are just a few of the noteworthy composite shifts. There was not room to put all of them on the slide, but again, anything above that 3 to 5 increase range is considered considerable. Our grade 3-8 math, you can see, gained almost 20 points this past year. And Ms. Reed Costy will come up and share a little bit more specifics on some of the specific charts with you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. As my colleague, Ms. Hussey mentioned, the schools received a performance letter grade. We haven't received these grades in several years due to the lack of testing because of COVID. And last year, because there was no testing, there was no growth scores. So these are the first grades we've received in a couple of years. You can see the composite, the integers that are there, and it's kind of cross-referenced to the letter grade. What I like about this chart is that you are able to see how close some of our schools are to achieving the next letter grade. It makes it very attainable for us. And you can see how many of our schools either met or exceeded growth. This is just our elementary, K-8, and middle schools. J.S. Waters, for example, their school composite integer was a 67, so they would be 3 points away from moving up to the letter B. For the high school performance grades, once again, you can see our Chatham School of Science and Engineering is an A-level school, which is amazing. We have one school, Jordan Matthews, that received a letter D grade, but they are very close to reaching that integer of 55 and moving up to a level C. Something to keep in mind is that across the state, there were, pre-COVID, there were about 488 low-performing schools, and in this past year, that doubled to over 800. Nearly doubled to over 800.
Can I interject something there? The School of Science and Engineering, the 98 is a great number. Put things in a little different perspective. Of all the high schools, correct me if I'm wrong, of all the high schools in the state, they were tied for 4th of all high schools in the state.
Yes, sir. So now we're going to dig in a little bit more into more specific subject areas. So these are the performance composites. We're going to start with reading and move into math and science. So this slide represents the pre-pandemic composite that we had. That was 62.4% for the district. Last year, that decreased down to 47.9. We were able to increase that by 9 points. So we're only 5.5 points under where we were pre-pandemic. I think this is telling of how hard our teachers and staff worked, and that we can see that we're on our way to closing those gaps that are occurring across the country, or have occurred across the country. So some really spectacular highlights that we have is the actual numbers. This is percentage points of increase. The one that jumps out is 8th grade math. So we had an increase in 23.6% of students that were proficient on that exam this last year compared to the previous year. And you can see our 4th grade reading and our 5th grade science, we had some fantastic growth in a lot of areas to be really proud of. So this is also for the performance composite. You can see we took the schools that had, these are our 5 top schools with the most growth. So it kind of is highlighting. And you can see that what's great about this is that it occurred across the district. So it's all of our schools, all the way from our Siler City schools, as well as our schools on this side of the county and J.S. Waters down in Goldston. So it's beautiful that it's occurring everywhere. This slide is probably one of my favorite slides. So you can see what's highlighted in green is the state growth average. So as an average across North Carolina, the performance composite was a +6. And you can see how many of our schools were above that state average. And then our average as a district was +9. But you can see all of the schools and their growth, and again, in all areas of the county. So we made a couple of different graphs to get some different views. This represents the numbers that you saw in the previous diagram. but this just shows bar graph. And we have all of North Carolina is represented in the first set, and then Chatham County in the second. So it just showcases, you can see the second line from the past year is much higher than last year's. So you can see the growth that's occurred across all the county. So with our high schools, it's also, you can see that all of our schools showed some growth. One thing to note about Northwood is that it's comparing some of the students that transitioned or were redistricted over to Seaforth. Seaforth only has one bar because it was the first year that was open. So now if we look closely at reading proficiency, so this, I'm not going to kind of show everything. The important thing about this chart is the county, that we are above the state average in all grades. When we're looking at schools that are around 70% or higher, that means that we're doing a fantastic job and having our children learn to read. So you can see, again, it's kind of all over the county. We have Chatham Grove in 4th grade, that's 86.6%. And then we have Bennett, who in the 8th grade had 75.8%. So just some highlights. The 3rd grade Read to Achieve is state legislation that requires us to report how our 3rd graders do with reading proficiency. This is posted on our district website as required by law. And this just is also very telling and interesting. The one thing to keep an eye out is the total number of students obtaining 3rd grade reading proficiency on the bottom. So you can see even post-COVID that we're at 79.2%. Most schools would be, if we're at 80%, we feel like we would be doing a great job, and we're really close to that. So it's something to be proud of. So something that that we like to do is to just take a different lens. So the previous bar graphs have representation of where our schools are. When we create a scatter plot, this tells us grade level wise how our grade levels are doing. It lets us see trends. It also lets us see highlights. So just with a slightly different lens. So with this slide, you can see the one thing about reading that's interesting is that there's a wide range of scores, but you can also see how we elevate students in the 4th grade, which is really exciting. I think most of these students missed their 2nd and 3rd grade due to COVID. So it's really exciting to see the scores raised like that. And if we continue into secondary numbers, you can actually see that the gap, the breadth narrows a little bit, and so the scores become a little bit tighter, which means that we're really trying to close gaps and keep things consistent for our students. So with math proficiency, again, for elementary and middle school, if we compare the county average to the state average, you can see that we are exceeding. In some of the areas, we're over 10 points above the state average, which is fantastic. Some other big signs, as you can see, that in 8th grade proficiency, we're above the state average, and also there's a narrow band. You'll be able to see that in the scatter plot really clearly. But Chatham Middle, in this case too, had significant gains from last year. They increased by 17.1%. So again, as I was mentioning, the math proficiency is a lot, the stretch of numbers is a lot narrower, and so the students are performing more consistently. And it continues into secondary math. You can see our Math 1 scores, the range is much larger than in the other subject areas. But what's exciting is that by the time they get to Math 3, we've seen to raise those. For science proficiency, again, some highlights that were above the state average. I mean, you can look at even George Moses Horton is at 76.9%, J.S. Walker's at 83.3%. So again, it's across the county that we're seeing success with our science proficiency. And here, when we're looking at 5th grade, 8th grade in biology, again, our schools are performing closer together. We have these amazing integrated dual language units that our dual language schools use that focus a lot on vocabulary and content, and we think that's what helps kind of shrink that wide range that occurs with the reading data. So some of our high school indicators show obviously areas where we have growth, but you can see, as Dr. Moran mentioned, our SAT scores are considerably higher than the state, and our English 2 is also considerably higher, as well as our word keys. So our 4-year graduation rate is really comparable to the state average. We have some schools where we are want to keep an eye out for, but what's interesting about this number is that this is a 4-year accumulation. So while it's students, it's not necessarily just students in this 1 year that did not graduate within 4 years. It could have been that they dropped out 2 years ago. So it's accumulation of students not graduating. Our 5th-year graduation numbers are actually something I think that we should really celebrate, because you can see that we have more students that are graduating in 5 years, which means that they are feeling connected to our schools, they come back, and they're willing to graduate even though it's not in the normal track. And Dr. Moran's going to share some next steps.
Thank you, ladies. As you can tell, we have quite a few areas that we can certainly stop and celebrate, but we also know that we have some areas that we need to provide some specific focus on. So in the bottom quadrant, you see areas to target there. High School Math 1, our students who are considered ELL, we want to continue to raise their vocabulary and reading. We also want to look at our federal long-term goals, which is looking at achievement gaps amongst different groups of students. We also want to continue to focus on grade 3 reading and grade 8 math and our graduation rates as well. One of our district goals is to make sure that our graduation rate is above 90%. Some of the things that we hope to be able to do to focus on those areas, if you look at the top quadrant over on the right, we want to continue to use state-level check-in data, which is formative assessment all year long to monitor student progress. We also will be utilizing our dropout prevention coordinators to follow and track students and make sure that we're not missing them throughout their years. We'll also be doing more instructional visits in schools. During COVID, many of our academic staff were filling in classrooms or serving as principals when principals were out, and so we're excited to be able to get back into classrooms and monitor instruction. We also will be focusing on the state rollout of the Science of Reading, which is comprehensive college-level courses for all of our K-5 teachers in the Science of Reading. How do children learn how to read? Our teachers have just started that process at the start of this school year, and that will be an ongoing professional development over the course of the next 2 years. We also want to continue to focus on culturally respectful teaching practices to make sure all of our students feel welcome and included in school. And we also want to increase fidelity to our principal instructional priorities. We set as a district the types of things that we expect from each one of our principals for monitoring quality instruction. And so we'll be visiting with each one of our principals to monitor that. For any of our schools that were considered low performing, we do what is called a support plan, where we sit down with the principal and the school improvement team and we look at the types of individualized support that those schools need. So we have a lot of work ahead of us, but also a lot of great things that we can celebrate as a district. I love this quote that Dr. Jackson had when he sent out the accountability data to our teachers. And while we do have a lot to celebrate, we can't just celebrate that alone. That was from the hard work of parents helping their students at home recover from pandemic learning loss. It's a hard work and testament of our teachers and the extra time and effort that they put into helping our students catch up as well. And I'll leave you with this last quote. This is why we do what we do each and every day. Every single student in Chatham County schools matters. And we want to make sure that while we stop to celebrate, we also want to push forward towards continuous improvement. We're happy to answer any questions that you have, and we're excited about these results, and thank you so much for your support of all of the hard work that our teachers have put in over the last year.
the letters training, Dr. Moran, K-3 teachers, how does that work?
K-5 teachers.
K-5, okay.
Pre-K, 5.
Okay, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Miss
Thank you.
Little would get me right
Thank
now.
you, yeah.
Yes, so our pre-K teachers all the way through 5th grade will all be receiving this training over the next 2 years.
Any questions?
So, first of all, just congratulations to the administration and the teachers and the staff for all the exciting news about how we've grown and the rebound from COVID and how that's looking, even though we have more to go. It's reassuring to hear that we're on the path. And thank you for all the hard work that was behind the higher percentages compared to the state average. And some of it was surprising to see that some of the, because people have, ideas that some of our surrounding communities, particularly our more urban centers, would be above ours. And it's nice to see that we are competitive with our surrounding counties. And so, anyway, I did have a question just for the sake of the listening public about growth, because people sometimes ask me, what is growth? And so I was wondering if you could explain, for the sake of people listening in, what growth is.
Sure, so, and I'll refer to my experts over here as far as how the mathematical equation works, but essentially the bottom line is that we want every single student to have a year's worth of instruction and a year's worth of learning. And so when you look at growth, it looks at where they were and how far we moved them.
So there's a company right down the road in Cary, SAS, that has a magic formula, and they take historical data and they calculate where students should be expected to be. And they also do that with our EL progress. So they say this is where we expect them to be the next year, and they take those scores and they make comparison to determine if they did, and they turn it into an integer. They put it on it's really a scale of -10 to +10. They convert it to a 100-point scale, and then give schools an integer for that. That accounts for 20% of the grade.
So typically, the growth model would have accounted for 3 years of students' performance. Of course, when you're in the younger grades, you don't have the 3 years of tested history yet, so they have formulas and calculations in the background to take that into account. So they also made extra considerations and modifications to that formula because of the lack of testing in 2020 to account for that gap of time. But they do use historical performance of the individual children to determine if their current grade, if they have achieved growth, and comparing them to averages of that population.
Great, thank you for explaining that, and just so that people out there can really understand the significance of the growth that we saw. And so I really appreciate that. I have another question, but it sounds like Mr. Ham does too.
Well, I just want to clarify something, because every month they change the ball game on all of us, and y'all are the first to find out. But when you're talking about the growth, when you crunch all those numbers into their secret formula in Raleigh,
We're not making that up. There's really not a formula that's released to us. They just give us the information.
it's secret, and if they want to change it, they change it to fit things. So, but the growth, how a child improves in the year, it doesn't matter where they started, but then where they end is their growth. But that is only a 20%, am I still right? That's still, their growth is only 20% of the overall magic formula. And forever, when we got into testing and been crying about this for 30 years, 40, didn't it? Yeah.
Close.
Growth is growth, and that's what we should be measured on, not 20% of that growth, but 100% of that growth. Because you can take a child that walks into first grade that still doesn't know their color words and doesn't know sight words, but they walk out of your room having mastered, I'm old school, having mastered the 220 Dolch words, having mastered writing a short paragraph, but you know what? According to the state, that's not good enough.
A perfect example of what you're talking about is Virginia Cross. Virginia Cross had the highest growth composite in our district. It was right around 20 points. Actually, I think it was 20 points.
A little over 20.
A little over 20. And when you look at them on a scatter plot of every school in the entire state of North Carolina, they're an outlier. They have higher growth than any other school in the state of North Carolina that has a population considerable. But yet, because their school performance grade is only 20% calculated by that growth, their proficiency score, which is lower, causes that to be a lower grade. I would put the teachers at Virginia Cross up against any in the state. But unfortunately, the grade calculation rubric that the state utilizes does not celebrate that extreme growth. So they're, in my opinion, and I think just based off of the way that the growth calculation works, they're actually moving students further and faster than many schools, not only in this district, but across the state. So we certainly want to make sure we continue to celebrate that.
Another question I had, unless somebody else says I don't want to jump. So you mentioned that we will have information on groups of students and how they're doing, and just because I think I would find that also helpful. Just curious how that's going when it comes about.
Certainly. So you may recall that in the past, we've typically not shared this information with you until October. So we felt really compelled this year. We wanted to get it out to you as quickly as possible. Much of this information was just released last week, and there are hundreds and hundreds of charts for us to sift through, which we'll continue to do. We will send you the link, and we'll post it on our website. You can look up any school and any district in the state on that North Carolina website. But much of that information did not come out until after the original press release, so we only had our own data. But we still wanted to get you as much as we could in this first presentation.
Well, thank you so much for providing all that, where everybody can go back and check it and see and have an understanding of what it is.
And I guess SAS continues to provide our schools and our teachers with growth data for their classrooms and their, as far as the individual teachers too. Am I correct on that?
Correct. They have not released the individual teacher data at this point, only the district and the school. As soon as we receive that data, principals work to share that with individual teachers, and then our team begins to work to provide professional development to any teacher who's not meeting growth expectations. But I believe that's scheduled to come out this week or early next week. The 19th.
I would also add that therein lies part of the challenge. The students take the assessments in June, and we're just getting the data the week that school opens. Well, they've done a lot of planning, so now schools are having to go back and retool what they thought. So school improvement plans are having to be readjusted to meet this. And so it really is, it's a mammoth and a huge task to get it all together. And as you can see, we're still getting those pieces. But on the DPI's website, they have kind of the high-level initial data, but we will get laser information, the student growth score that will go home to their parent, and teachers get to work through that with them so that they can plan with them as well. But that growth score is important as well as the proficiency score. But it's a timing that really is a little off, and I wish that we could come up with a better way. Because wouldn't it be great if they had that in July, maybe, and could plan for the opening of school, and teachers could really plan their instruction. So right now, teachers are having to do some really, revisions that if they end up the students in their class who need something that they didn't plan for, they've got to revise that to meet those needs.
It would be great if the students.
And one thing I know the board has asked us about in the past that I did not put on the slide was how are ways that we can improve for families that might not understand the testing information. And so our accountability office has made videos that help walk a parent through each of the testing reports in both English and Spanish, so that families will be able to access those, and we have plans for some additional videos as well. I think Ms. Allen, you'd asked about that last year. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Anybody? Thank y'all very much. I appreciate it. Item C, Enrollment update, Dr. Moran, you're back, you're just switching folders.
So as we shared with you during the last meeting, we wanted to continue to provide you with some enrollment updates because this information drives a lot of what we do for planning and getting ready for school, but it also impacts our budget, of course, after the 10th day numbers. Well, today happens to be the magic 10-day window. So if you look at the chart here, it's a little bit different than the last one we showed you. But as of today, we have 8,964 students. That's up 17 since Friday. Our projection was 8,625 students. So we've outpaced our projection with 339 students. Now, I will call your attention to this, that this particular chart does not include our pre-K student numbers, and we have around 150 pre-K students as well. If you look at our K-8 schools, we have considerable meeting of our projections with the exception of VCE and Silk Hope. And then our 9-12 schools, you see JM and Chatham Central are slightly under. Overall, we were above our projections as a district by quite a bit.
Dr. Moran, just from a historical perspective, the people we work with at ORED, I can remember year after year, I would pick at them and say, well, my gosh, y'all really messed up your projection because we were 3 over what you said you were going to be. And Dudley, Mr. Dudley, and he would give me a little smile and probably want to hit me. But that they do a fantastic job, and now I'm going to go to bat for them. That just shows, even with all their crunching of the numbers and all our new neighborhoods and everything else happening around here, I'm just kind of thankful at this point in time that we're only off by 339 because they have historically, Mr. Blyce is looking at me grinning, historically they have just nailed it year after year after year. And to no fault of theirs, this is probably the worst miss that they've ever had, but we've never had what's going on like we've had before. So, and for the most part, haven't heard, we don't have anybody hanging from the ceiling right now, so we're able to accommodate and take care of this, and just keep crossing our fingers of how long we can do that, Mr. Blyce.
And actually, if I may, so the ORD projection is actually only 51 off of that number.
Oh. So they're off by 51 points rather than.
Well, then I owe Mr. Dudley an apology. I was going on the 339.
So remember, we have the state projections for budgetary purposes, and then we also have the planning projections from ORED.
Next year, put state projection. Okay. No, that's great. You see, then that proves what I just said. They're good.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Moran?
On the high school chart there, we brought this up before and just want a clarification. The virtual high school.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
The 9th grade virtual students are 9. Is that 9 their own 9, or are they part of the Chatham Central 96?
So I'm glad you mentioned this because that also does explain what we see happening at Chatham Central. Typically, the projections are a little more stable. And this year, if you remember, because of the state law change, we had to have a separate school number for our virtual students, which means they're not a part of the Chatham Central High School or Bennett student enrollment numbers. They have their own separate line. So when you look at the number of virtual students over here, you're also seeing that could be why we're seeing that shift at Chatham Central. We don't see quite as many students in our virtual program this year. It's down slightly, but we still have a demand for that for our students K through 12. So we are continuing to offer that. So while it is under one school number, the K-8 students are still being served at Bennett, and the 9-12 students are still being served through Chatham Central. But they do have to be identified as a separate school number. We were one of those school districts that had that approved prior to all of the things with the pandemic, so we were allowed to continue this where other districts were not able to continue. So we're very grateful that the state allowed us to continue to offer that program.
Well, on that, talking about the high school virtual, I know in the past, I think, if I remember correctly, a student could take, say, 2 virtual courses and take an in-person at Chatham Central. Then you've got to have a separate number. Can they still do that?
They still can do that. So we have some homeschool students who might come to us for a seated class like a biology lab, but they can also be enrolled in their homeschool as well. They have to take 2 classes with us in order to be considered a Chatham County school student and for that to count in our enrollment.
But in the elementary, Bennett, they are totally virtual. Am I correct on that?
They are totally virtual. We do have them come on campus if they need intervention, and they also come on campus for specific state required testing.
When I met a couple last spring that they were there for the testing.
They also do come on campus for field trips when we're providing those.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, thank you, Dr. Moran. And year-round school feasibility study, Dr. Moran.
All right, so year-round schooling is something that over the years research has really proven to be a beneficial model for closing achievement gaps. And it has continued to come up in Chatham as an area of consideration or interest that people have had over the years. But we've really not taken any steps to study this and what it would mean for our district specifically. So what we have for you tonight is just a proposal to do just that, to figure out, would this be feasible for our county, and if so, how, where, and when. We always want to ground things in the why, and we know that priority 1 in our district is related to curriculum and innovation. Making sure that we're increasing 3rd grade reading, making sure that all of our schools are meeting and exceeding growth, and also making sure that our students have a graduation rate of 90% or higher. And we believe that looking at year-round schooling could be just one way to do that. So how in the world did we get here? This has been a topic for as long as I've been in Chatham, about 9 years now, that we have kind of heard things about, whether it be from parents or from staff or from other groups. We do have currently some restart schools in our district who have calendar flexibility as a part of that designation. We have Chatham Middle, Virginia Cross, and Siler City, but we have not yet utilized any of that calendar flexibility. Our principals of these 3 schools specifically have asked about this option for a couple of years, but it's something that, obviously with the pandemic, it was not something that we were able to continue to move forward with. It also came up in our listening tour and some of our focus groups with community members and parents. And then we continue to find ways that we can support our students, particularly in the Siler City theater pattern. So the group that we're currently working with is called RTI. That stands for Research Triangle Institute. And they do a variety of different things across the educational landscape, business landscape, industries across the world. Currently, they are looking at research and evaluation methods to help close achievement gaps. They do things in districts like program reviews, research, supporting implementation of large projects, and for us, helping us look into year-round schooling options. They also do policy research and assist in designing programs, just like what we're looking at. So here's just a short overview. We did meet with some of our principals during our Leadership Institute this summer. This information has not been discussed with staff at this point, or really anyone. We just wanted to see if this was something our principals were still interested in looking into. So this is just a little bit around the research for why year-round schools are an option that many districts look at. It has been shown that they can help address achievement gaps. Year-round schools also can be an effective model for adding additional intervention time and instructional time into the school calendar. It also can provide a staggered schedule that can increase staff morale, can reduce summer learning loss for students, and breaks are evenly staggered throughout the year instead of that really long summer break, which can help particularly in areas that may have low-income students who may not have that support over the summer. And that's just a few of the ways.
Dr. Moran, the first one is the biggest one, I think, because late 80s, when I was looking into this, when I was in Pittsboro, and California, Arizona were the big ones doing all the year-round stuff. Then, the research did not say it was going to improve your test scores. And so it was really hard to go and tell your parents that you're going to turn their schedule upside down to a 9-week segment session. And so that's encouraging to see that now it is making a difference, because then that in itself is worth its weight in gold.
So this is just a little bit of a timeline for some of the types of things that RTI would do with us. We wanted to make sure that we had an outside perspective on this, some folks who have done this work in other districts who have helped lead year-round school models, and then also someone who's unbiased, who can help lead the parent groups, the staff groups, even student interest groups, so that we're not leading that process. We want to make sure that we're getting authentic feedback and not feel like we're pushing any particular thing on any of those groups. So you can see here, we did have a kickoff over the summer, just with our leadership group and our 3 principals. We'll have some design sessions that they will lead, the RTI group will lead. That includes parent groups, student peer groups, community members. We also have some staff listening sessions. And so they'll build all of those materials for us. They'll carry out those sessions for us. We may participate, but they'll be the ones that will compile that information and report to bring back to the board at the end. This is just another way to look at what was on the previous slide. It's putting it into buckets, a kickoff and design meeting, listening sessions, and then also the final piece, which would be a feasibility study, and then a final recommendation to the board if it's deemed that it's something we would like to move forward with. So those are kind of the 3 buckets that they'll help us with. So there is legislation around year-round calendars and year-round schools. So keep going. I'm not going to read all of those to you, but we know that there's a lot around calendar law, so we have to make sure that we fall within these existing requirements. Really, option 3 is the one that we're potentially looking at, which would be dividing the school year into about 5 9-week sessions that requires each student to attend, and then would provide those staggered breaks. And if you'll go to the next slide, it kind of shows you kind of that broken down. The blue is our traditional calendar, which is governed by start and end times with legislation. The green is what we would be potentially looking at, which means we would have a calendar that would run from July 1 through June 30th. There would be 4 9-week blocks, which is about 43 to 47 days, followed by a break of 13 to 18 days. So much different than the one big break that we typically have in the summer. What's interesting about that particular model is you can also provide intervention, which we would be able to do in real time with the students versus waiting till summer school and trying to catch them up for things they may be lost in the fall. So that is a particular model that we would be looking at. There's also a model called the multi-track, which you hear about mostly in larger districts like Wake, where they're having to look at having students share a school, where one group of teachers and students track out and another group tracks in. My brain has a hard time thinking about how that would work. And so the model that we're particularly looking at right now is the model that's in the center, but they will provide us kind of pros and cons for each of these models. But these are the models that are allowable by current statutory requirements. So how does this fit within the context of Chatham? We currently have 3 Restart schools that already have calendar flexibility. And that again is Siler City Elementary, Virginia Cross Elementary, and Chatham Middle. So the calendar legislation does not apply to those 3 schools, even though we've continued to have them on the traditional calendar. Other flexibilities that fall for those schools are some budget flexibilities, which we do utilize now. We have employment requirements that we can waive. Also, we can change the way that students are assessed and the type of curriculum standards that they have to follow. And we can also look at class sizes. If it's beneficial to students, we can have larger classes and group students accordingly. So lots of flexibility, much more like charter schools and how they can structure their school day. Jordan Matthews would be another school in this feeder pattern. They are currently not a Restart school. And so they would be required to follow the academic calendar requirements by legislation. Currently, we do have a calendar cycle. As you know, we have a committee that brings forward parent, teacher feedback, and then that typically goes out to the community to provide feedback on as well before we have that final vote for you. So we do have an established process already, which is helpful for us to look at year-round. So the proposed feeder pattern that we're wanting RTI to particularly focus in on and study is our Siler City feeder pattern. What would be yet to be determined is if that would be a K-12 year-round pattern or just a K-8. Most high schools, I don't think I know of many, and Dr. Jackson, I don't know if you do, high schools are particularly hard to do year-round because of the athletic schedules. So they will outline the pros and cons for us on that, but right now we're looking at the Siler City zone. You might also see up there, Silk Hope is also in that feeder pattern. Typically year-round calendars and a feeder pattern will have an opt-out school, so if that doesn't work for a particular family, there's a school where students would be able to go in lieu of the year-round option. So that's the area that we will be studying with the help of RTI.
So just, I guess you're getting to the question slide, and I'm getting there already, but the feeder patterns that you're talking about that are what would be different in Siler City from, I mean, as under this plan, that would have elementary and middle having a different feeder, a different calendar from the high schools. Does RTI consider when there are siblings in different schools? Because that immediately raises questions for me, like what happens if, you know, especially because in our community in Siler City, you know, we have a lot of people that are low income and they gotta rely on each other to get basic needs met, and sometimes that includes transportation basic needs, and high school kids can drive, and so I just wonder about, you know, how that affects kids getting to school, and, you know, where summer vacations always come up, but I mean just basic, like, day-to-day life.
Sure. And so RTI has helped other districts with year-round processes. In fact, the person who's assigned to us has been a superintendent who helped roll out year-round schools. And those are some of the considerations that they will certainly be bringing forward when we look at pros and cons. We also know that we'll have to bring on community partners to look at, you know, during those windows of time that students are not in school, what types of services can we offer as a community? So we'll definitely have Boys and Girls Club, communities in schools, and some of our local churches and things like that a part of this, so that we know that we have opportunities for students during that break. Those partners work with us during the summer breaks and other types of times like spring break, so we feel confident that they'll be willing to also think about how this might work.
The other question I have is about daycare and after school, and so I realize we may not have the answers to this tonight, and it probably is embedded in the study and the work that RTI is doing, but one thing I would be particularly concerned about and want to know about is, you know, with childcare being so expensive. In fact, you know, Council for Women does a report on the status of women every year, and a few years ago, it was determined that the cost of childcare in the Triangle, which includes our county now, costs as much as sending a kid to college. But you save for college, you don't save for daycare, and we don't have a lot of daycare options. And so, you know, when I think about, you know, what happens with pre-K, or I think about like families with kids from multiple age groups, you know, some people in the summer rely, you know, on kids, and I'm just trying to figure out how they would handle after school and how that might correspond with other programs and you know, grandparent schedules, all of that. So I would want to know more about that when I think about the community I live in, Siler City.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you.
And there have been school systems in the state that have been doing it for 30 years. So they have a lot of those answers already.
And I'd be
We
interested in
need to reinvent the wheel, because I know we visited Mooresville. Not Morrisville, Mooresville in the west. And they, everybody we interviewed, they said that once you get on that schedule, you would never go back. It makes a big difference. And I remember saying, even a first grader, kindergarten, you can visualize 9 weeks. You can see the light at the end of the tunnel for 9 weeks. You know, Right now, our next light at the end of the tunnel is Thanksgiving, you know, so, you know, it breaks it up in chunks. Usually those 3 weeks you're off, that middle week is your remediation. So teachers that want to keep teaching, they can do the remediation week and still have a couple of weeks off before and after. So there's a lot of pros to it.
Yeah, I would agree, it sounds like there are a lot of pros, so my questions are more just making sure we don't leave a stone unturned that might impact anyone.
We'll be working with RTI to map out kind of the remaining part of the timeline, but this would more than likely be something that would probably be a perfect board retreat item to really dig into more information after we have these listening sessions. So it's important to note that obviously no decisions have been made. We're purely having them collect information, lead this process, so that when we do bring a recommendation, if it's determined that's appropriate, we'll make sure that we have gone about it in an effective manner. So more to come as we work through the process, and as we develop the dates and the timeline of all of those listening sessions, we'll make sure that we work with our PR team to get those out to families and to each of you as well.
I also encourage you all to take a look at the financial benefits of what that looks like. I saw budget on here under flexibilities, but I can imagine that there's some profound benefits when you look at the finances and how we could reinvest those dollars across the entire county if we do consider going in this direction.
When we look at our planning team, we did not put a slide up there for that, but it includes transportation, finance, the curriculum team, PR, pretty much almost every department in the district, because it will impact budget, transportation, child nutrition, all of those pieces.
Any other questions for Dr. Moran? Thank you, and we'll move to our action items. Item A, 2022-23 local testing plan. Dr. Moran.
You may recall that each year we bring to you a local testing plan. We have in the past had years where we fell above the state level for the amount of assessments that we required as a district, and that's changed over the last 2 years. So we are no longer required to provide a full report and have that presented to the state, but we do have to show that we have made our public and the board aware. So we fall below the state average for that now, and so what we have here is just what we're required to submit to the Department of Public Instruction for the type of assessments that we have here in the district. Ms. Reed-Clossy, do you have anything to add for that? Or?
These are in addition to the already state mandated assessments, like the EOGs and EOCs.
Most of these you've seen before. This is actually just a printout of the survey we have to submit. It tells the funding source for any of these assessments. As you know, we have dual language assessments. We also do screeners for students to be able to catch them early instead of just waiting for EOG to tell us that students are not doing well. And so those are local assessments that we provide for our students above and beyond what the state requires. So that's the full report there. Most of those you've heard us talk about are part of our MTSS work as we work to provide interventions for students and catch kids early in reading and math in particular. So you'll see the name of the assessment, the grade, span, the time that is allotted for each of those assessments, the number of students it impacts, and the amount of time that is used, as well as the budget source for how we provide funding for that assessment. I'm happy to answer any questions. We did put it on here as an action item, even though we're not required this year to submit a formal report for that.
I move that the Chatham County Board of Education approve the local testing plan as presented.
I have a question.
Well, we need that discussion, can't we?
Yes.
Got a motion, do we have a second? Second. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, just also for the sake of public information, because I'm sure the other students who get questions a lot about testing, like, why is there so much testing? And so can you share like what y'all have done to help make testing efficient and productive, just for the sake of the people that ask?
Sure. So one, we reduced the number of assessments. So anytime we had duplicates of things, we tried to condense down. So one of the things we're really proud of now is that we have assessments we can use K-12 so that we can monitor students kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. We use the STAR assessment in particular for reading and math. In K-8, we use that pretty much with every student. In high school, we use that for students who maybe are struggling. But what's nice about that is you can track them across all grade settings. And the EOG doesn't really allow us to do that because each year it's a new set of skills, right? So that's one thing we've done is condense down the number of assessments. In the past, we had things kind of in different testing programs, and we had things that kind of duplicated the same skill sets. Also, we have schools that are utilizing curriculum coaches and other staff to be able to utilize intervention time to assess students, to monitor their progress all along the way. Just as your doctor would check you every time you come in, we want teachers to be monitoring students along the way versus waiting until the end of the year. So using our interventionists and some of the curriculum coaches and other staff that we have has also helped alleviate some of that time being used with teachers for instruction time. So the vast majority of what we do test is state required with the exception of those MTSS assessments.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions through discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion with an aye, please. Aye. Any opposed? Like sign. Thank you, Dr. Moran.
Thank you.
You get to sit down.
Memorandum of, item B, memorandum of understanding, Department of Social Services, Ms. Fowler.
Good evening, members of the board, Mr. Chair. I'm bringing you tonight a memorandum of understanding between Chatham County Schools and the Department of Social Services of Chatham County. We've had agreements in the past that spoke specifically to looking at transportation. This is the first time we've had an MOU to bring forward to you. Under every student succeeds that we are required that we work with our local departments of social services to ensure that students in foster care do not have to have more transitions than needed and they receive support. And so we want to make sure that we are doing that not only just because it's something we're required to, but because it's something we're doing to for our students. I did ask Cecilia Christensen, she's our director of social services for Chatham County, and I asked her to really just publicly kind of thank her for the support and the collaboration that we have. They're always there as we kind of work through difficult situations with students, and knowing that we have this partnership where we can kind of work together to make sure that we're supporting students.
Any questions?
I move that the Chatham County Board of Education approve the MOU with the Department of Social Services as presented.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion? All right, all in favor with an aye? Aye. Any opposed, like sign? Thank you. Thank you for being here. All right, item C, 2022-2023 budget resolution. It says semester, I think that's Ms. Smith coming there, I think so. All right.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Tony sends his apologies that he's not able to attend tonight, but I thank you for the opportunity to present the budget resolution to you. The resolution is a total reconciled initial budget of $128,635,050. Just a few highlights from the state budget. Teachers received an increase ranging from 2.5% to 7.2% depending upon their years of experience. Locally paid teachers also received this exact same increase as state paid teachers. Non-certified employees received an increase of $15 an hour minimum or 4%, whichever was higher of the two. Two more things that are really affecting our budget this year. Retirement increased to 24.5% from 22.89% last year, and hospitalization increased to $7,397 per employee from $7,019 last year. From the county, this is just a reminder, we received an increase for the current fiscal year of $925,000 in local current expense. $820,000 was for the employee supplement increase, and the other $105,000 was for the new central services operational increase. The retention bonus totaling $4.8 million will be paid out in September. $3 million of that will be paid out of ESSER funds, and the remaining $1.8 million will come from fund balance. This is a big reason for the change in current expense. The funding sources for the current year, excluding child nutrition, because they're on their own separate fund. State is about 50%, local is 40%, and our federal are 10%. All of our federal funds have been budgeted except for Title I so far this year and all the grants that follow it. They just haven't been approved yet, but they'll be presented as a budget amendment later on in the fiscal year. School nutrition budget is based off of the 1920 school year reimbursements due to the fact that students have been eating at no cost for the past 2 years. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have, if I can. If not, I'll have to get back to you.
Yeah, that's, you know, I don't think Gary heard me, but Mr. Messer looked at the agenda and saw that he was last. That's probably why he's not here. So you got blessed, you did a great presentation, and I do have a question, but I really thought Tony was going to be here, but you probably have the answer anyway. You crunched the numbers.
We'll see.
And I'm not asking for the exact thing. There's a lot of talk in the news about how the COVID money, I'm not going down the road of misspent, it just hadn't been spent. And there's, you know, when you say a national average of 7% has been spent of all the gazillions of dollars, where do we, do you have a ballpark idea?
We're spending it, I know that.
Well, you know, are we, okay, this will be easy, are we above that 7%?
We are.
Okay,
We are.
that's.
Which is the reason for the 1.8 having
Yeah.
come out of fund balance.
But that, you know, that is an issue, that all this money was given out to the schools across the nation, and I don't know why they're not spending it. So.
Some put some delays on that because they still have until 24 to spend it. So some really may have pushed their money out, used what they had locally before we used. So there are different strategies for using it, knowing that it was going to sunset anyway. They may have used it for it. So many districts have used different strategies across North Carolina, depending on what their local capacity is.
And that's fine and good, and that, I think, explaining that to your community is good, because when you hear a national average of 7%, you're saying, well, how are they spending the money? You know, so, okay.
Can you remind us what fund balance is after this 1.5 or 1.8 that you mentioned?
Exact number, and we don't have an exact number
Ballpark.
yet. And
It
is
was,
that,
I think it was supposed to go to 8, and then this will be about 6.2. Does that sound?
that sounds
I
about
think
right.
if I remember some, I don't know, but I think it's somewhere in that ballpark is my understanding, because we're supposed to go up in fund balance. I think we have about 6 and go up about 2, which would have been 8, so I'm guessing it's a little over 6.
What's considered healthy fund balance across the state in terms of?
Well, they recommend,
That was 10, right?
they recommend a certain percentage of local funding, and I think, when I asked Mr. Messer, maybe 2.5 for Chatham County, 2.5 million, 3, somewhere in that ballpark. Does that sound about right?
That sounds right.
3, about 3, I want to think, and I asked this question a while back, so my memory could have slid about that too, so.
Thanks, I appreciate that. That's it for me.
Any questions? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. All right,
Thank you.
any discussion? All right, all in favor with an aye? Aye. Any opposed, like sign? You're good, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, before we move to adjourn. I wanted to thank Ms. Lavin for the years she spent on the board with us. She has announced that she would be resigning from the board because of personal reasons, job reasons, family, all kinds of things. And she talked to me over the weekend, and I have really enjoyed serving with her. She's been wonderful. Her expertise on all kinds of things. She cuts the chase really, really well. And that helps in any kind of meeting. And I know I speak for the board. We're going to miss her tremendously, but I'm going to let her speak now. So, turn it on.
I've had the honor and privilege of serving with these fantastic colleagues and the leadership team here, and 2 superintendents. And I expected to only be here for a few years. I came in and had interviewed for the position and ran for office twice. It's hard to walk away. This was a very difficult decision. It's also hard to walk away, especially from such a cohesive and collaborative board where we all respect each other's opinions, where we all care, where we all have different opinions. And I expect that once I avail my seat, that same characteristic will continue. I wish everyone the best of luck. I'm still a parent. I have 2 kids here. I'm very proud of Chatham County, proud of our growth, proud of what we've been able to accomplish collectively. And I expect the board to continue to do great things. We've, in fact, got bigger leaps and bounds given the population growth and the explosion in the economy that we're going to see within the next 10 years or so. In particular, I want to thank Gary for his leadership. He's done an extraordinary job leading us. Gary has a unique ability of being able to bridge the history of Chatham County, both as an educator and a longtime citizen, but also have the open-mindedness to be able to look into the future. He's very compassionate, and he's very fair. And I just wanted to say that publicly, Gary. I feel really honored to have worked under your leadership, as I know the rest of the board feels the same way. So thank you for making this, on some days, a little less painful because we know that these are very difficult decisions. We stuck together through some really challenging times, and we all had to lean on each other during that time. This is not an easy job. Many times people say it's a thankless job. I think people have probably thanked me for serving on the board less than a dozen times over the course of 8 years. But that doesn't matter because I know in the end that we're doing something that's right for the students, the teachers, the staff, and the administration. And as some of the folks said today, we have to continue pushing forward with our education here. We can't stop. And while sometimes it's difficult to hear some of these comments that are being heard, and we cannot respond. I think sometimes folks forget that. Don't think that we don't go home and think on these thoughts. We reflect on these thoughts. I'm getting emotional now because there are times I come home and I get emotional over these thoughts. We wrestle over this a lot, professionally and personally. We wrestle with everything. I think the one thing we don't wrestle with collectively are our values. And I'm glad that we've stayed true to our values and not betrayed our values. But I thank you all for allowing me to serve alongside everyone. And I thank you, Dr. Jackson. I wish I had more of an opportunity to spend with you, but you will hear from me, and I know you're going to do great things for this county. So, thank you.
We also need to, we've looked at the policy, looked at it today, talking about what we need to do